My name is Keita Lethery, and today I'm going to be talking about love. What is love, you might be asking yourself? Some may say it is that warm, fuzzy feeling you get inside when you're with that special someone. Others may tell you love is just a big waste of time. Well, I'm here to help you unpack what love is today. Let's start by looking at the next slide. My overarching goal in life can be summed up by the verse, "Let all that you do be done in love," found in 1 Corinthians 16:14. In the Bible, specifically 1 Corinthians 13, love is said to be patient and kind, not boastful or rude, and does not insist on its own way. In Matthew 22, the two greatest commandments are concerning love, loving the Lord your God first and loving your neighbor second. When we understand it in this context, love is not that warm, fuzzy feeling you get when you're with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your dog. Love is an action, and I believe it is the most important act we can do in life. For this reason, my overarching goal in life is simply to love. So, how can interpersonal communication enlarge my conversation? Let's go to the next slide for the answer. We learned from Stewart in Bridges Not Walls that interpersonal communication happens when we treat someone as a unique individual, as a real, live person, not just a role filler. In doing that, we are loving them by recognizing their value and their worth. As well, Stewart teaches us about inhaling and exhaling, listening and perceiving others while also being open and practicing self-disclosure. When we listen to others before we choose to speak, we are putting their interest before ours. And when we're open and honest with others, it shows that we care about having a relationship with them, and again, makes them feel valued. This goal is one that is important to me, but it is not one that is accomplished very easily. The next slide shows how my background and behavioral blend influence my communication style. I've always liked getting bad news first, so I'm going to start with the negatives. Although I've been raised in a Christian home my whole life, my family has made many negative contributions to my communication style. I grew up in a very chaotic home that included many fights. My parents yelled at each other a lot, and as one would expect, my siblings and I were very impressionable and picked up on their communication patterns. We yelled instead of talked calmly. We interrupted each other instead of listening, and we resorted to hitting each other when we didn't get our way. To make matters worse, I was homeschooled for many years and had fewer opportunities to observe healthy communication habits. Although these habits are not as pronounced as they used to be, they still linger, making interpersonal communication and consequently love something I have to work very hard at. In addition, my behavioral blend contributes a lot to my negative communication style. According to Carbonell in his text, How to Solve the People Puzzle, I am a DIC, and I have some vicious tendencies. My approach to conflict can be at times similar to an attack. Carbonell describes it as a, quote, vicious animal tearing people apart, unquote. As well, Carbonell says that people who are DICs think they know everything and are not very humble. And boy, does that describe me to a T. My lack of humility and need to be right can sometimes make me hard to talk to, and it often comes off as judgmental, which is quite the opposite of love. Despite all the negative influences in my life, there have been some people and places that have redeemed my bad habits, which we will explore on the next slide. Attending Liberty University for undergrad impacted me and my communication style in significant ways. I was far from home and constantly surrounded by wonderful examples of kind, patient, humble people. I learned how to listen better, how to approach conflict more gently, and what humility looks like. As well, two of my best friends, Elizabeth and Samantha, have been good examples of love and positive communication. Both are slow to speak, quick to listen, and whenever I have a problem, they willingly listen to me and show empathy while remaining not judgmental. How they have treated me has made me want to treat others in the same regard. Lastly, although my behavioral blend does not consist of many good traits, there are still some positive ones. For example, Carbonell notes that DICs are outgoing, able to express themselves well, and generally seen as optimistic. Although my bad seems to outweigh my good, I am at least aware of my problems and I work hard to combat them. Now, I'm going to dive deeper into some common communication barriers that I face in the next slide. The most significant communication barriers that I've encountered are my poor listening skills and need to fix others. Burley Allen in Listening, the Forgotten Skill, posits that listening involves being non-judgmental and empathetic, acting in a way that welcomes the speaker to talk more, and adding minimal but encouraging input. Too often, I am judgmental in my listening and interrupt to provide my input instead of encouraging the speaker to continue until they're done sharing. Sometimes, or all the time, I am very impatient and cannot wait to say what I'm thinking. Unfortunately, impatience doesn't really fit well with my goal. Similarly, I have a very strong desire to fix others, which inhibits good interpersonal communication. In Why Don't We Listen Better? Peterson notes that when our goal in life is to listen, that when our goal in listening is for others to see from our point of view, we aren't really listening. What we are doing is being selfish, self-centered, and not very helpful. He also advises against giving advice so quickly as it takes away from actually listening. These two challenges are ones that I run into quite often. I think if I can get my point across, people can see problems from my point of view, and their lives will be better. Very rarely is that the case though. So how can I fix this? The next slide will help answer that question. One helpful resource I've discovered is an article by Bertino called Effective Interpersonal Communication, a Practical Guide to Improve Your Life. Although written for nurses, the strategies and insight offered in this article extend well beyond the scope of nursing. For instance, in relation to my need to fix others, Bertino suggests that this tendency could arise from a quick fix mentality that has overcome our culture. We are so concerned with the fixing aspect of problems that we completely forget to listen to the problem itself. She implores us to stop, realize that we are stuck in a bad mindset, and take the time to properly consider whatever problem arises. Another helpful resource can be found on the next slide. Why Don't We Listen Better? Why We Don't Listen Better by Peterson has provided me with so much insight into how to listen and love better. One of my favorite strategies Peterson suggests is to listen without defending. This tip probably sounds obvious, but to someone with poor communication skills, it needs to be repeated. Peterson believes that a defense can basically be considered an attack, and when we attack back, problems don't get solved and we enter into a flat brain tango. Listening without defending allows the listener to understand where the talker is coming from and start taking steps to resolve the issue instead of adding to it. Lastly, on the next slide, Stewart and Bridges Not Walls offer similar advice to Peterson. His version of a flat brain tango is a degenerative spiral. In order to beat this spiral, Stewart suggests doing what comes unnaturally. For me, what is unnatural is being patient, listening without interrupting, and basically ignoring every instinct I have. If I start to put these three strategies into practice, I believe my love will be a lot more evident to others. All of this information begs the question, how will I make my goal a reality? Well, I think a few simple, yet so hard, steps will get me there. Let's look at the next slide. First, I need to practice. I can take the advice of Peterson and plan sit-downs with friends in order to work on my skills. Like he said, the more one practices, the less robotic these skills become. As well, I plan to set little sticky note type reminders in places that I frequent, like my bedroom, my car, my bathroom, to help me break my natural tendencies and listen and love better. On top of that, setting reminders on my phone every hour or two will help my newfound listening skills be in the front of my mind. Last but not least, the last slide will show the most important part of my action plan. To give a Sunday school answer, spending more time in the Word and prayer will help me reach my goal. My problems are ultimately sin problems, selfishness, impatience, and they'll not go away without help from the Lord. On the next slide, you will find a quote. This quote is an interpretation of 1 Corinthians 13 found as a monologue in the song Proof of Your Love by For King and Country. I actually used part of this quote for my senior page in my high school yearbook. It has been almost 5 years since then, and it still holds the same weight for me now as it did back then. The lyrics go, "And if I have faith to say to a mountain, jump, and it jumps, but don't love, I'm nothing. If I give all I own to the poor, and even go to the stake to be burned as a martyr, but I don't love, I've gotten nowhere. So, no matter what I say, no matter what I believe, no matter what I do, I am bankrupt without love." Thank you.